All right, Todd, we're going to wait till 6 p.m., but this thing should be live now. It didn't do the countdown. Sometimes it does a countdown. I'm still working out this tech thing, and I'm the cyber guy too.
Trust me, I am not the tech guy.
Awesome. So the don't look at necessarily the numbers up in a corner. That doesn't replicate what's on the other platform. So there'll be a lot of folks attending. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Beyond the Resume. My guest today, this evening, is really just a remarkable individual, someone I've wanted to have on as soon as I thought of putting this show together and having this live stream. It is the none other than Todd Simmons, former Chief Master Sergeant in the Air Force, now, and we could spend an hour talking about all of the things that he's accomplished, and we're going to, whether it's an author, and I said 2-time. He's actually, I counted 6-time author, entrepreneur, businessman, you name it. Todd Simmons has done it. And I'm excited to talk to him today, mainly because, one, I love talking to him, but also for the audience that is attending, this is possible for you as well. Whether you're a junior enlisted, a senior officer, anything in between, a veteran, a college graduate, a high school graduate, doesn't matter. What Todd has done isn't easy, but it is doable. And it's the path that in many ways that I'm about 4 years behind him in accomplishing some of the things as well. So Todd, thank you again for being a guest today. It's an honor to have you. It's a true honor to have you.
No, Scott, I appreciate it. And man, I am so uncomfortable with compliments. And everyone who knows me knows that. But I appreciate all of the things that you just said. And I will tell you also that you know, we didn't meet. We met a couple of times on active duty, very briefly. But I will tell you, you were someone, you're talking about accomplishments. You're somebody I watch from afar. I absolutely watch from afar. And, you know, as we get into conversations, you'll actually, you know, put those two and two together. Why? Because, man, I've always had this fascination with what we can do as enlisted people. You know, and I think you know, my last 5 or 6 years in the service, I racked my brain about more, especially my time at AU. Like, how do people see us? How do they perceive us? Not only as Air Force enlisted, as department enlisted folks. And this was something that really kind of kept me up at night. But, you know, there are names I can list on a legal pad, but you were at the top of that list when I saw across what you were doing across the service, the respect. I had airmen telling me about this, you know, this master guns, and I had other E9s and chiefs in the Pentagon who I worked with very closely talked about you. So, you know, your flowers are definitely deserved for what you brought to the table for something that's so incredibly important, is how we transition, how we show up even when we're in uniform, how we show the next generation what's possible. And we can't do that if we don't show up in our true self. And you did every day when you were in service, and you're still doing it today.
Well, and I appreciate it, but you know, and we're not going to spend an hour patting each other on the back, but I want to touch on a piece of that topic, and what you said, and I think you have been someone who, has all of those accolades, was the command chief for Air University. I mean, oh my God, that is huge, right? When we start talking about developing the current force and the future force, I mean, all of the folks there, that's a huge one. But you didn't rest on it. And I think that's the one thing that I've learned from those that have succeeded after is, hey, that was my resume, but I don't need to walk you through every achievement medal and commendation medal I received or every combat deployment. I'm moving forward. So if you could spend a little bit, just a moment or two, telling us who Todd Simmons is, because I want to get into what Todd Simmons has done and how others can accomplish that as well.
Oh man, who I am. So yeah, I'm proud person, young man from Hardyville, South Carolina. No one has probably heard of that. Population 6,100. From Hardyville, South Carolina. Just a kid, to be honest with you, had not a lot of choices. I came in the Air Force with a 33 ASVAB score. I got in the Air Force and later became the AU command chief. Let's just talk, that's crazy. But, came in with, right out of a high school dropout, went out back to high school, came in the Air Force 33 ASVAB score. But who am I, if I'm not listening to that question correctly, someone asked me recently as of this week, like, what are 3 attributes do you think you have that makes you go? And I said, grit, number one, determination and humility. So I would say if I was to put the DNA of myself, of never quitting, because there was a time where I couldn't read on the 12th grade level. There was a time where I had a learning disability. There was a time where I couldn't pass a test in my first year in the military. These things that got me through all these challenges was resilience challenges as a young E1, E2, where, I had 2 suicidal ideations. And so grit at some point, which, got me through these tough moments in my early part of my life, in people. And I think that's the most important aspect is when, meeting these pivotal people at these moments that really transcended like who you can be and what you can be. And that belief, once it was instilled in me, became almost, I don't want to use the word addictive, but certain things early in my life, like learning and going to school, once I learned how to do these things and understanding what achievement was and how to do things with humility and determination and sacrifice, and those things that were instilled in me by young NCOs and senior NCOs, very young, just got so lucky in the bag that I got an opportunity to be around those people, and I can name them to this day, that really instilled what was already in me, but they brought it out for me to believe that was possible.
Yeah. And I have, as a new father, a relatively new father, I have thought about those accolades you talked about, in terms of grit, humility, determination. What I put drive in there as well. And I think that's packaged in those adjectives. Where does that come from, that drive? And I ask that because I'm going to assume, and I've known you well enough, that you weren't born with a silver spoon. You weren't born into a multi-million-dollar family. And so I think about that. If you were, if things were easy, would you have that grit and determination? And the reason I say that is because my daughters, not that I don't know I'm a decamillionaire or anything, but we're doing well. We're never going to have to. We're always going to have what we need. And so how do I give them the lifestyle where they also have that grit and determination? Where does that come from, Todd?
Man, that comes from, honestly, a lot of places. Man, this can be the whole segment. First, I would say it comes from a 6-year-old scared little boy that at 6 that believed that there was nothing and no one, honestly, for me. I mean, it's not a sad story. I think it's built in. My mom was a loving mom, but my mom worked multiple jobs. She was a single parent, 4 kids. I'm younger than all of my siblings. So most of my siblings were going out of the house by the time I was 9, 10 years old. So for me, it's that belief of fear that there was no one coming to save me, to be honest with you. I've had that fear in my life probably since I was 6 years old. And that fear definitely intensified in my teenage years that there was no one coming to save me. And it's so funny. I was in a workshop today up in other part of Maryland, and I was talking about this story about, a kid who was, dropped out of high school. And I had no idea what the United States Air Force was, really. And I met this young man who was a staff sergeant recruiter in the Air Force. And I didn't even know you needed a high school diploma. And that was just in a low place. And he allowed me to come in the Air Force through a whole long story. But my recruiter is actually a SCS-1 in the Pentagon right now. And I've had lunch with him about 7 months ago. And I didn't see him for almost 30 years. He just found me on Facebook because he read my book. Some weird coincidence, right? But, what does that come from? Initially, it came from trauma. That not thinking I had a way out of anything. And when I came in the Air Force, I used to be so afraid. I had insomnia. I used to be so afraid of this was going to be my last day. This is going to be my last day. They're going to find me out. They're going to kick me out. So in my early years in the Air Force, I probably looked like a maniac as an E1, E2. Like I did anything. They wanted me to clean 100 guns. I'm cleaning 100 weapons. They wanted me to run 100 miles. I'm running 100 miles. Already had that kind of survival instinct in me. But it wasn't for a few years I served till I actually got comfortable knowing that, I don't have to hide the food. I don't have to hide, I am worthy enough to work like anyone else to be here. But yeah, I would say where it came from is a whole lifetime of trauma, of believing that I was less than, believing that I always didn't belong, believing that I always had to just find my own way. So it came with this determination to survive.
Much of that resonates with me as well. And I think about my early days too. I couldn't put a certain thing on it that says it give me that drive. But I have found that of all these traits that are out there, when you have an intense, desire to succeed, if you're driven, all of the things you talked about, have the grit, that will take, primacy over someone who is just brilliant and is not going to put in the work. Now, if you can have intellect and put in hard work, you can have something truly great, which is what you really took on in your career. And you got the, academic achievements as well. Not only could you when you first came in, you said you couldn't read at a 12th grade. Now you've written books. And so that's incredible too. So I want to dive into that now. So you make the decision, first off, what led to the decision for you to retire? I believe you were the command chief at Air University. You could have served more. I'm sure if you talk to the chief master in the Air Force, there could have been more for you. What led you to that decision?
Well, it was two-part, and it wasn't actually as ceremonial as people may think, right? So I struggled with this decision all the way back to 19 years in the military. So I made chief at about 18 and a half years. And I tried to retire at 20 at first, and it wasn't negative. Loved my Air Force career. I started teaching college when I was at E6 back in something.
Wow. And
so I taught college for 16 years on active duty, classroom, online, first in the classroom for many years. I had this burning desire that I knew something I wanted to do in academia. So when I was at the Air Force Academy, when I made chief, my first chief job, I tried to retire because it was an academic job that I could have taken. Didn't work out. I ended up, the best opportunity I ever had was not retiring at 20 years. I ended up going to AFCENT, ended up working for General Brown and CZ. And that's what kind of really re-energized me to serve a little bit longer. Ended up becoming command chief. So anyway, when I was at AU, there was a plan for me. And the plan was I could have served longer. The 24 years is when I made the decision to retire. And I could have served longer. There was a plan for me to compete for certain jobs. I did compete for one job out of AU. I competed for one job. It was an opportunity for me to go earlier than that, but I wanted my daughter to finish high school, which is an easy decision.
Easy decision to make, yeah.
Easy decision. I'm not competing right now. My daughter's a senior. It was her third high school in 4 years. Yeah. Easy decision so I don't want to compete. So I did compete for a job. I did not get the job, and I had to do some soul searching at that point. Do I want to stay or do I want to go? And it was honestly a decision that was twofold. I did a soul search that, do I want to continue, to be honest with you, no sugarcoating it, do I want to continue in this rat race? Yeah. I've given everything. I've PCS 5 times in 7 years at that point. That was my 5 PCS in 7 years, my wife's career. And, at the time I was, I had a ceiling for myself, to be honest. And the ceiling for myself was not over the next job. Okay. But even if I stayed, for my family, for me, an ambition for us, it was never to go to the top job. Yeah. So I had to go, what was staying really going to do for me? All staying would do was give me a next job, which would have been potentially a 4-star command, but it wasn't going to go farther than that. So I made a value proposition and I did a pros and cons list, and it was just that unemotional. I sat at the table with my wife and then 17-year-old daughter, and I said, I think I'm retiring tomorrow. Not physically, but I'm making the decision. I walked in the next day, talked to my boss and said, hey, when are you leaving? He told me when he was leaving. I said, that's my retirement date. It's just as simple as that. Yeah. I like that. You thought through it. And then that was it. Boom. Decision made. Yeah. Let's move on. Let's develop a plan. So you make that decision the next day. You go in and you talk to your boss. Walk us through then how you transition. What are some things that you did that were positive, but if you could do them over, you might change? Because I want the audience who is potentially going through their own transition to think of some things that were good for you, but also some things, man, if Todd had more time, you would have done what? Oh, well, the first thing I did is when I decided to transition, I said I've given at that point 24 and a half years. I was going to transition on my own terms. I wasn't going to run out of the Air Force. Right. So I chose to, and my boss graciously allowed me to do a 365-day transition.
Wow.
So I said, this is the day. So I'm retiring a year from now. So what I did is I kicked into high gear. It's that panic mode of 17-year-old kid that kicked in again. And I was like, okay, you got to get out of the military. You don't know anything else. So I literally sat down and say, what do I want to do? There was two choices. I want to go do something in the space of development, and I'm okay with going to work for someone else while doing that. And the second part was I eventually want to go open my own thing. So the first thing I did, if you look at the company, the designation of my company when it was founded as an LLC first before we moved over to S Corp, the designation of my company is actually 30 days after I decided to retire. So I started my LLC 11 months because I went to boost the business. I went downtown to the all of the University of Alabama downtown. I went to all these incubators. I started talking to business friends. I started understanding what it meant to have a P&L versus just random business stuff.
Yeah.
And I just learned. And I started re-educating and reallocating what I started giving my thoughts to. And, I was still doing my job, was still showing up every day, but I was devising a plan. Yeah. And from that year, my LLC, I ended up getting a job. What did transition look like for me? I'm a COVID retiree. No one knew COVID was going to happen. I retired from the Air Force December 2019. And my official day out of the Air Force was 1 March 2020. So I literally had a job with a great company. They hired me exactly what the plan was. Great company. I was going to be a leadership development consultant. And another company hired me to be a consultant where they wanted me to have a leadership track eventually to work with the CEO. So I had two great opportunities that I fell right into when I was retiring. And I was okay with that. I said, I'm going to learn and I'm going to still build my own thing. None of that came to pass.
No.
So March, when I'm onboarding with a company, COVID is happening. So I onboarded and offboarded in the same 30 days.
Wow.
So this is the reality moment. And every retiree goes through this in their own way. I had some panic attacks almost. Yeah. I'm sitting at home. It's COVID. The entire world is shut down. I'm in a new city that I've only been living in for 95 days. And that's it. And it's really alarming. And the next 2 to 3 months, I sat home and ate Oreos and gained 17 pounds. That's the reality of my situation.
Yeah.
And from there, after I found the end of Netflix, I was like, there's no more Netflix. Like all the shows are gone.
You've stolen one of my talking points in some of the speeches I give. The last page of the internet. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, there's no Netflix. So I actually dusted off this LLC and I went, what are my basic go-to skills? Yeah. What are my basic go-to skills? And one of my basic go-to skills, I was a college instructor. I've taught thousands of people. During that time, the military and these civilian education institutions have sent me to curriculum development, all these courses I haven't used for years. Yeah. Well, I ended up having a friend who's a retired chief who works at NASA. And we were talking, and long to the end of the story, he said, hey, man, I got all these people home around NASA and they're not doing anything. And hey, I know you teach and I know you do. Can you develop some courses for us? And I'll see if NASA is interested. So my business literally started in 2020. I developed a suite of about 15 90-minute online courses. And I basically just looked at the HR portfolio of what NASA teaches, diversity, inclusion, difficult conversation, all of these things. And I developed lessons and I went and got 2 or 3 of my friends who I knew were still in the same space I was in. And we started teaching NASA on a contract.
Wow.
That's how we started.
That's incredible.
And from there, it gave me this huge boost of confidence that I could do this. So from there, for the next year, we were an online company. And then we transitioned into other things.
Todd, you mentioned you got a plan. And I've said that a million times, you got a plan. I think I would tell people, spend a lot of time thinking of what you talk about. What are you good at? Potentially, what can you monetize? Because, at the end of the day, you got to pay the bills. Yeah. And what do you enjoy doing? And that could be getting a job, but it could also be doing things like you talk about. And that you also talked about the panic attacks, and however you're going to go through that. But there's a moment that each veteran that's going to retire or get out after 4 years, whatever, you go through in a different way. Mm-hmm. And it's really, you take a moment when probably you're all alone, the kids are in bed or whatever, and you start thinking about, okay, how am I actually going to pay the bills? How am I going to pay the mortgage? How am I going to put my kids through school? Like all of these things that are the reality of the world we live in, because it's getting more and more expensive. How am I going to do it? And I think that's the moment every person that's going to retire or get out has to come to that come to Jesus moment, if you will. And then you have to develop that plan. For me, I started developing it a little earlier because I pretty much knew there wasn't anything else for me the way the Marine Corps works. And, you do 30 or so years. But everyone comes to it. And I hope people that are listening really hear what you have to say there, because it's necessary. But I think it's incredible that, your first gig was with an organization that's designed to take us to another planet. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. It was my first client ever was NASA, and my second client was Air Force Base. So it was great. And I want to caveat on something you said about transition.
Yeah.
When people ask me when did I start transitioning, I started transitioning 20 years before I actually got out of the military.
I like that.
Because my first time that I thought that I was getting out of the Air Force is when I was in my first enlistment and I got med boarded because of my hearing issues.
Okay.
So that was a wake-up call. I was a broke airman, and I was almost out of the Air Force if I didn't get a waiver. And that showed me right there that no matter how much you love this, no matter how much you want to serve, no matter what kind of patriot you are, service can come to an end for a number of reasons anytime. And I never got caught short again. So my mentality from E4 all the way on is that I develop a savings plan. I develop an education plan. So, for me, I probably served my last 10 years okay with my service. If something happened to me, I was prepared enough to enter an unknown civilian career.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that I necessarily was preparing for it, but I was doing the things that were going to be necessary that can translate on the outside. And some people hear that the wrong way. As if your pack is not on and you're not still doing your job. No. You can do both, right? I think I know you can. You can do both. You can prepare for transition and still be exceptional at what you do, even in a deployed status. You can still do this. And I hope everyone that's listening realizes that at some point, even I think General Milley did 44 years or something wild. At some point, everyone's going to get out, and not having a plan is really planning to fail, to use that cliche. So you started your company, and you started, CLA. Based on what I saw, you've had that company since April 2019. Okay. What should the audience know about starting your own company? Because I think some people think this is incredibly hard to do. And while it's not easy to do, starting a company, now having successful companies, that's a whole different story. But getting it started, how was that process for you starting CLA?
I will tell you, if I could go back, and I talk about this everywhere, and I do business coaching in it. If I can go back to 2019 and have the information that I have now, it wouldn't have took. So I would say it started in 2019, but the company did not become viable till 2021. And why do I say that? Because it was never a belief that I knew everything. It was more a belief that I didn't know where to go find the answers. So while I was active duty, everyone said, go to Boots to Business. And I am not dogging Boots. I went to Boots to Business, and it was like, okay, I know some basic stuff here. And and I would say there's a split. If you're going to start a business, the first person that you need to talk to is someone who has started a business and was successful at it.
Right.
And I'm not going to take anything away from my friends or anything like that. But I was talking to my friends who were still in the uniform with me about starting a business who have never started a business. And in the E9 or upper echelon of leadership, no one is shy about giving you advice.
Right.
So everyone is giving me advice. The first thing they tell you, go start an LLC. And no one really knows what that means. They just go start one.
Right.
And then, people, and it's going to save you on taxes. Well, actually, it's not. In reality, it's really not, unless there's a whole lot of other structural things that you do. But no one tells you that because they don't know. So it took 2 years for me to figure out what a business actually is versus a hobby that had an LLC. And I'm not disparaging anybody on that. I'm just saying I had a hobby from 2019, a hobby and a passion.
Yeah.
That wasn't a business. It had a business name, it had a business structure, but it wasn't a business because I did not treat it like a business. Now, 2021, I was super fortunate to meet someone who's been in business 28 years in a similar sector that I'm in now, who has been wildly successful at their business. And the first thing he asked me was, how do you make $1 million? And I went, $1 million? Well, you mean like in the next 15 years?
Yeah.
He was like, no, I'm not saying that you have to make $1 million. I want to know, do you have a plan to make $1 million? And I'm like, absolutely not. I'm trying to like see who's going to hire me to do the next thing. And he was like, that's not a business. And I was like, oh, I'm kind of, I've been doing this for 2 years. You're telling me I haven't been in business. It's like, no, you're in business, but that's not a business. And he said, if you can plan structurally, how do you plan to sustain $1 million in revenue? And when you finally hit that, there's no difference in doing that and making 10, making 50, making 100. But you have to understand what a business structured as can make sustainable revenue. And it changed my mindset. But so going back to your question, if someone's starting a business today who is a veteran, there are so many programs out there. Dog Tag Bakery, and I saw Sasha Savage. I met her in that cohort. I'm speaking at that cohort tomorrow, the DC cohort, then the Chicago cohort the next day. Dog Tag Bakery, they're actually a bakery that runs a veteran entrepreneur cohort for five months, I believe, that teaches you all these skills. Wish I would have known that in 2019 if that was around. Bunker Labs. Oh my goodness, go to Bunker Labs. They have so many programs in Bunker Labs that are on-site deep dive to entry. The SBA, the VA and the SBA both have so many programs. I will tell you, sign up for as many programs you can because they're free. Some of them are very selective. Some of them are just incubator programs that you can get into. And before you start your business, learn about the business. The same way you cannot be a dentist until you learn how to work on teeth, you need to learn how to run a business. And I would end with this. We have to have humility. Regardless if you are E2 or E9 or O1 to O10, if you're going to get out of the military and become an entrepreneur, it is okay to ask someone a question who may not have obtained the same rank and status that you were in the military.
Amen.
One of the most successful mentors I had in business is a former E6 who runs over a $10 million a year revenue company right now.
Yeah.
Who is 15 years probably younger than me. But when he speaks, I am a student.
Yeah.
I am not trying to negotiate what he's saying. I'm not trying to come on top of it. I'm not trying to compete.
Yeah.
He has been successful in a world that I haven't. And I have 2 or 3 mentors like that who are wildly successful, and I'm wildly older than them.
Yeah.
So I would tell any new entrepreneur, not to go long on that, but that's important. Find you a program, SBA, Bunker Labs, Dog Tag Bakery. It's so many Google veteran programs out there. And go start learning business acumen. That's what you need to learn. Business acumen skills. If you can get your business acumen up to a B level before you actually go revenue, it will serve you so much. Because something as simple as marketing, and I can give you props. I have people that come to me and say, why are you on social media so much? And I say, well, why does Chick-fil-A have commercials?
Yeah.
Because it's the same reason.
Yeah.
Now, Chick-fil-A has 100 people in their drive-thru at one time. So if you think about that from the same question aspect that you just asked me, they shouldn't need a commercial because everybody's eating their sandwich. But that is not business 101.
Right.
You're always trying to gain the next customer, not being satisfied with the customer you have.
Yeah.
I'm pleasing the customer I have, and I'm going after the one I don't.
Right.
And people buy from people, which is the second part of that. And the third part of that, I can't buy what I don't know you sell.
Amen.
So when someone, a veteran, and I usually get this from a veteran and say, hey, man, I don't understand why I'm not going to be on social media. And I'm like, well, you're not going to sell anything if you're trying to be in the leadership development, speaking and coaching business, consulting business. You're going to have issues, especially if you're not, I don't really use the word brand name, but if you don't come out of the military with some sort of recognition in a field or something, then you have to build the brand credibility.
Yeah.
And what you are building with this show right now is called social proof. So when someone looks at Scott Stalker and they're going to see United States Marine, they're going to see Master Guns, they're going to see cyber, but they're also going to see this other side of Scott. They're going to see him with his wife, his kids. They're going to see this show. You have shown them now social proof that I am a complete whole human. And people are going to fall in love with that. And people want to buy from that.
Yeah, Todd, you nailed it. I hope people clip that piece, if nothing more, and hear everything you talked about, whether it was the hobby and business conversation. That is huge. And that is something, man, we could talk for hours on that. That is huge. I hope everyone really listened to what you had to say there, took notes, replays this later, hears it again, and then takes action, because you're right. I mean, unless your hobby is golf and you just happen to have a PGA card, which is never going to happen in my case. I'm just horrible.
No.
But then so be it. But absolutely. And to the marketing and branding thing you talk about, a closed mouth does not get fed. And I hear the same conversations as you. And why do you go out on social media? But I'm also in a world now where I just don't have time, or nor do I care about the naysayers. The reason I'm going to make 7 and 8 and 9 figures is because I also get an opportunity to give to more charities. I have an opportunity to hire great people. I have an opportunity to do things that I love with people I love. It's not about buying another pair of shoes. I mean, I wear cheap Skechers as it is. So it's not about that. But I want to be successful like you. And so I'm doing that through branding and telling people about what I do so that they have an opportunity to purchase this. They also have an opportunity to say, no, thank you. And so that is a great piece you had there, Todd. Thank you for that.
Absolutely. And as you progress in this, anyone progress out here, you start seeing your social proof turns into monetized, things. I can tell you right now, because I have a great 30-something-year-old in Houston, Texas. I don't know if she's listening right now, that can tell me everything that's going on with my website, can tell me everything that's going on with all of our social media. And we keep ours pretty organic. We know we get over 20-something% of our business literally from just posting what we're doing. Yep. I'm giving away a trade secret right there. If everybody wonder why we do a workshop, and exactly within minutes of that workshop being completed or while it's happening, we're posting photos, very specific photos of what we are doing, not just us from 30 feet back. So you can see what you're buying and you go, man, I want some of that. We know that almost 30% of our business comes from just a referral after repost.
Yeah.
Literally.
It's huge. I mean, I had to, for the first time in my life, say no to a speaking engagement that's upcoming. And the only reason people have reached out to me lately is because I'm telling people I love to speak. And the reason, I knew what you were doing this afternoon because I saw your post earlier today. I mean, we talked about that earlier, what you were doing in Maryland and all this. You got to share this if you want others to say, wait a minute, I didn't know that Todd speaks about this. Let's consider him, And then you may get a call and you may say, hey, I'm sorry, I can't make that one. However, Smith or Savage, she could go do it, right? I mean, someone else could do it. You can hand that off. That's what the whole beauty of this is.
And honestly, I want to pull that string real quick. The name of my company is Courageous Leadership, that later turned to Courageous Leadership Alliance. And I want to tell people what my vision was. When I went from Courageous Leadership to Courageous Leadership Alliance, this was exactly my vision, exactly what you said. And you can contest to this. We didn't know each other on active duty. I'm an admirer of you, honestly, because of what you post. I know you more post-military because of the brand you have built. And the 2 times we have had maybe an in-person conversation, this enhances that. But when I have an opportunity that fits Scott Starker, what do you get from me? A text.
You do, yeah. I can tell you, I was with my daughters at the water park when you called me. Hey, Scott, can you do this? I was like, let me check my calendar. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's just, well, that talks about your character too, Todd.
No, and I'm not putting it back on me. I'm
Right.
talking about, if I had to be honest, if we're really bringing this conversation from a business to business in our former ranks that we wore, or just a senior enlisted, I know you're a Marine and I'm an airman, but the cultures are same. We didn't reach we reached the pinnacle of where we reached without having to do some hard fighting, right?
Yeah.
And to be honest, promotion is competitive.
Yeah.
And as I tell people all the time, it can be positive competition or it can be toxic competition. And those are balances that we both have seen throughout our career. We've seen it in organizations we've been. What I would love to have the conversation on, not on this platform and continuing in conversation, things that I do in transition space, is to tell people that the more competition that you put in this stage of your life as an entrepreneur, the less successful that you're going to be. There's nothing wrong with being competitive. Scott and I have similar companies. Yes, we both want to raise $10 million and have our name on side of the building on side of I-95. But no successful company has been successful without some sort of partnerships throughout their existence.
Right.
And for me, the opportunities that I'm getting from larger companies are almost alarming, because I'm waiting on this competition that I've been used to in my past career. And I'm having people open the door and go, no, come on in. And I'm like, when is the negativity going to happen in this? And I've not experienced that. But what I have experienced is sometimes going to be brutally honest, and people can, beat me up on social media. I have experienced, not in all cases, when my former peer group gets together, we all want to be number one. And in business, I can tell you, I can care less about being number one. What I care about is being a number. And let me explain what that means.
Okay.
If I have a partnership with you, Scott, I also have partnership with probably 10 other things going on. Yep. If my partnership with you is worth 5%, that's 5% more than I had yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely.
I am not concerned if Scott is the guy out front. I am not concerned if Scott is getting all the accolades. I'm not concerned if Scott's name is all over the paperwork. What I am concerned about is the 5% that I agreed to do. Am I getting in return?
Yes. ROI. ROI.
That is my only concern.
Yeah.
Now, if my 5% is multiplying because Scott is out front and people are loving Scott, this is me behind you, Scott.
Amen.
Go, Scott.
Amen.
We can get mesmerized into this thing of ownership means it has to be me. There are plenty billionaires who only own 5% of something. There are Facebook billionaires who own 0.5% of Facebook.
Right.
Oh, I mean, so and that's where I'm trying to get at the entrepreneur, of the veteran entrepreneur, to realize is that, yes, we all can go start our own thing, but it doesn't have to be our own thing.
Yeah.
Because, 10% of 10 million is a whole lot better than 0% of 10 million.
Amen. I think that mindset and mentality, it doesn't resonate with everybody. And I have found out about things after, in this business area we're in now, where there were opportunities that weren't presented due to a variety of reasons. And I find that it's really just an insecurity from others. And that's sad. But like you, I don't necessarily care who's the face, whether it's a young kid, young lady, doesn't matter. I just want to win. I just want to win. And I want to continue to improve. I mean, when this is over, I've got I'll be heading up to the Pentagon to do business there tomorrow. I mean, and I think you said, are you going to Chicago, or are you doing that virtually?
I'm doing Chicago virtually. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So you've got other things going on and that sort of thing. Kristen here talks about, she would love to turn a hobby into a business. Any tips or advice for someone? Because I know there's a lot of people thinking like that, hey, I make candles, or hey, I don't know. I write articles or something. And it's kind of a hobby for them, at least. What would you tell them in terms of turning that into a business? What do they need to do?
Some of the greatest hobbies has become multimillionaire businesses.
Right.
What I will tell you is to really know your market. So what is this hobby? How can I monetize it? Kind of a Shark Tank mentality. What is this thing? And does the market demand it? I just had this conversation with someone last night who said they had a skill that they wanted to transition from the military and actually make it into a business. And the first thing I asked him was, how do you know anybody wants that? And that's not a derogatory thing.
Right.
That means go find the market that's already successful in the thing that you have. Now, if this is some one-off thing, then you might be to start in a new market. But if it's something that you know, like candles is out there, okay, now before you go invest in LLC, invest in money, spend a couple of months doing market research. Go to one of those places, the VA, the SBA, even Boost a Business, and write a business plan. Go to ChatGPT and write a business plan. Do whatever it takes to actually put a plan down that's going to tell you what the risks are. It's basically a SWOT analysis. What are your opportunities? What are your weaknesses? What are these things? And what's the capital that's needed to invest? And when can I expect a return on investment? So those are questions that you got to start asking yourself, because every hobby can be I have a hobby of making lamps out of liquor bottles and cigar boxes. It's a hobby of mine. I've made tons of them. I've never sold one. I give them to my friends.
Yeah.
Give them away. But I've had people offer me $200-300 for these cigar box lamps and but the reason I can't sell it is because it's a hobby that I'm not ready to commit to.
Yes, that's the key word. Yes.
It's not that I can't sell them. It's not that I can't put a website up, but I can't commit to any volume because I love it and I do it when I feel like it. Yeah. So the first thing you got to ask yourself, am I ready to commit to this being a business? Because a business that you're starting is not, and I hate when people use the term, oh, I'm just doing this part-time. Well, there are no part-time buyers. There's only full-time buyers for your product.
Yeah, I either buy that product or I do not. I don't rent it.
So you have to do full-time work to place your product into an opportunity to be bought. Yeah. So understand what the commitment is before you're going to put resources. I was going to open a boba tea restaurant here because really? I heard a friend of mine, she was opening some boba teas, and I went and did some market research. I'm like, oh, I might open me a boba tea. And then I went and I'm like, you know what? My wife looked at me like, why? And I said, do I have the capital to do it? Yes. Do I have a great location in my neighborhood to do it? Yes. But you know what I didn't have, Scott? I didn't have the commitment.
Yeah.
I am too busy. I'm in 2 other places. Yeah. Now, what I was going to do is open a business, hire a bunch of teenagers, and it was going to close in 6 months because I wasn't going to pay attention to it.
Yeah, it would have. And you would have been out capital too.
So that's where I say, when I tell people, how do you turn a hobby into a business? You got to have commitment to it. And you got to have a plan.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got a friend coming down next week, 2 weeks from now, and he owns 8 restaurants in Ohio. And like every year, every time I talk to him, once a year, it seems like he's acquired 2 more. And everything I talked to him about, it's full on commitment. He does an analysis, what street does it need to be on? Do they make a right turn or a left? Yeah. All of it, where's he getting his supply chain? He commits and then he continues to grow. So great point there. Yeah, absolutely. And I would be horrible at running a restaurant because I would probably then be 500 pounds and eating all the profits. So, hey, there's a couple things you have done. I have not shared with anyone this yet about me, but I just committed to writing a book, and I literally started that commitment Monday. I'm moving out on that now. You have written, to my count, 6. Mm-hmm. How do you have time to write 6 books? 1, and 2, tell us about that. Why did you do that? What are your books about? Where can we find your books?
Well, you can find them all on Amazon, and you can find my first book on Amazon and Mascot Books. So it's something that's always interests me. And when I was retiring and I was sitting in my Oreo phase in my house, I said, I'm going to write a book. And it was a great time to do it, not only because of the time, but everyone was at home and it was this new environment. So my first book is published through Mascot Book Publishing. So I went to a full publishing year-long ordeal.
Why not me, right? Is that our first?
Yes. Why not me?
Why not me?
And that what I did through that is that taught me the mechanics of writing a book. I had a writing coach, I had editors, I had graphic designers, and it was just excruciatingly painful, but worth it. And at the end of that process, when I published that book, I had knowledge of how to do this on my own. And instead of going through a publisher the next time, you can go to Amazon KDP. And so I found a small publishing company now that was mom and pop that would do all my editing and all of the cover design. And now I can write. And then the next couple of books were, 30 Days of Courageous Leadership. Like actually, that was my first book. When I was retiring from the military, I wrote a small book that was inspired by an E6 who said, you say all these things once you write them down somewhere. So
he challenged you.
Challenged me. So before I retired, I rushed and wrote this little pocket book to go in your cargo book, 30 Days of Courageous Leadership, 30 things I say and things of principle of my leadership. And it was just really small. It wasn't meant to be published. And to be honest with you, it was on Amazon because I had to find a way to print them for Amazon print costs. 7,000 of those little things sold.
Wow.
And I took it off the market because at the time I was like, man, this is really shabby. It was just my kind of field manual of Todd Simmons' thoughts. And I rewrote it into a better 30 Days of Courageous Leadership. So we republished that. We wrote a 30 Days of Empathetic Leadership after doing some study and some publishing on empathetic leadership with a friend of mine. So I wrote that. I actually wrote a resilience coloring book that has,
I saw that.
And it's an adult coloring book because I was in the airport one day and I bought an adult coloring book and I was like, this is pretty cool, but it doesn't have journal questions. It's just coloring. So I said, well, how cool would it be to have journal questions and all these different things and thoughts of mine? So I did that. And I wrote, about purpose-driven leadership, 10 steps to, your purpose and different things like that. And we got about 3 or 4 other books in the work. So where do I find the time? I talked about this today. This is something. So when I was at E5 and I was in Alaska, and I know I want to be quick on this. I made this decision. I remember I was at E5 and I had 2 little girls. I had a newborn and I had a 5-year-old. And my wife was also in the military. I was at E5. She was at E4 and money was kind of tight. And I said, I'm going to go get a job at the club to be a night manager at the club. And I did. I went and got a job at the club. And I remember one night I was checking ID cards and a group of people came in and I knew them. They were in my squadron, some friends of mine. And they were laughing and I overheard them when they walked past me say, man, he must be hurt. You got to work at night, man. It's really it for a split second.
Yeah.
I was a little embarrassed.
Yeah.
And then I went, what am I embarrassed about? I'm working. I'm doing the things that I'm sacrificing. So for me, what do I find the time? Since that day, I've always said that everything that you want to be successful at is going to take a sacrifice.
Yeah.
So instead of playing intramural baseball, softball for my squadron, I went to school.
Yeah.
Instead of, going out to the clubs with my friends when everybody else was going out, I was working at night, making extra money for my family. That still translates today. My friends know me about that. You can text me and say, hey, man, let's go out or let's go golfing today. This may be the day that I just be in my house, sitting on my couch here in my laptop, and I'm writing 2 chapters. Yeah. So the things that you want to achieve comes with cost and sacrifice because there are other things that I will not do. I don't go to bed past 9:30. When my wife gets off at 1600, I try to be done with most of the things I do unless I have to do something. So there's actual sacrifice to achieve things. I know when I'm on a plane that I have 4 hours to do something. I don't go to sleep. I break out my laptop. So I have this schedule in my mind. Once I put my mind to doing the book, I know I'm going to be done in about 120 days. And I'm willing to sacrifice other things that really don't matter. I'm not going to sacrifice the gym because I'm going to go to the gym.
Yeah.
But there are certain things I can sacrifice, like being on social media.
Yeah, right.
Or
Oreos.
I can sacrifice Oreos, or I can sacrifice gossiping about people, it goes into energy management. How you manage your energy will be the output of your success.
Yeah, man, I got to tell you, I'm going to send this 1 hour conversation to Harvard University and see if I can get some leadership credits for it. This is awesome. Energy management, all of these things. I'm just hearing relentless pursuit of your goals. Like that's what I'm hearing is you're not willing to sacrifice those for your goals. You're going to do what it takes. Even though you may have, and I'm going to use a word here, you made mistakes along the way, such as, finding the last page of Netflix and the Oreos, but you corrected and you learned from that. So that's awesome. Your last book, your most recent book, is, when I heard the title, it's always something I've thought about, because when you're in these positions of senior leadership, you go around and there's a bunch of red carpets and everyone's telling you how amazing you are and you look great and all this stuff in it. And some of it is true, but a lot of it is hyperbolic. And so when you came to this book, am I as good as they said? What were you thinking about then? Were you dwelling on a conversation, or what were you getting at?
I was dwelling on that since 2020.
Okay.
It was a book, and I didn't know it was going to be a book. So let me tell you real quick, and I'm trying to do this in a minute and a half. I was in my Oreo Netflix stage, 17 pounds, and I was on my laptop in our rented home, by myself, no one in the house, and I was looking for my DD Form
214.
214. And I came across the file that my exec gave me, which had all my stuff in it, all my personnel records. And I don't know about you or anyone else, but I never read all my personnel. I never read the last 25 years of performance reports and decorations and medals all at one time. You read them for what you need them for, you move on. But I had nothing to do. I sat there and I read every performance report I ever had in the military, front to back, just sitting there, scrolling through this PDF, reading every decoration. And at the end, I was like, oh my goodness, like, if I'm that great, why is my phone not ringing?
Yeah, fair. Well, that's great. I love that.
Like, oh my goodness, all you're seeing is generals talking about this guy is literally like Clark Kent's brother. Like all these people saying all these things, like for decades. Like, I am so great, saved all this money. I saved all this time. I did all these things downrange. But I put in at the time, I was in this panic mode because I would like to say it wasn't working because the job market was kind of uncertain. I put in for 25 jobs. I'm totally transparent on Indeed. Had a resume, had a guy $400 resume. I put in for 25 jobs on Indeed, and no one called me except one person who was offering me $12 an hour.
Wow. That's remarkable.
And I was like, that's when I said it. And I said it actually to one of my friends. Am I as good as they said I was? Like, is this what's going on? Is this a military good? Or like, does this not translate over? And the reality is, it's not that it doesn't translate over. It's the reason why I don't use the moniker all the time of Chief Master Sergeant in my retirement, which I can get flack for sometime. It's the reality is you have to break mindset, break contact.
I agree.
And you have to realize for a moment that that's that, and this is this. And it's not that you were not. So if you go through the book and at the end, the last page of the book, I'll give it away, say you were absolutely as good as they said you were.
Yeah.
But.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
so,
yeah.
Well, it resonated with me. And the reason it did is, I struggled with this at my retirement ceremony, and I had to come to a compromise. My boss being a 4-star, he won, but I didn't want my award read. I actually didn't want an award at all because I've just always looked back on those that have awards for valor, and it's never been able to resonate with me that I get an award every 3 years for being good or taking on a position. So that. But what I would not allow was to have all those letters read. I got all of, like you did, the president and this and that. And, I was gracious enough to have CZ talk at mine as a SEAC. He came and said some words. But you said this at the beginning, to hear someone say all of these great things about you, it's very uncomfortable. It really is. And so when you do transition, I have tried really hard to have a hard break. Anyone who talks to me knows I will correct them quickly if they use my rank. I'm not going to get into an argument about it. If that's what they want, then so be it. But I'm Scott Stalker now. You're Todd Simmons. Those things we did, but we're moving forward now.
Yeah, absolutely. And
I
think it's one of the most important things you can do for yourself. Down to, I'll just say this point. I've been in a few of my friends' house, and I've done this, and I thought it was the most therapeutic thing that I did for myself. I have 2 offices. I have this office right here.
Yeah.
When I put this office together, if I was to pan around, you would see 3 items on my wall. That's military. Now, I got a storage locker full of stuff that's been in the storage locker for 4 years. I didn't throw everything away. It's in the storage locker.
Yeah.
But I took out 3 things that meant really personal things to me. And I put those things on the wall. And if you look at I remember my wife came in like, this is an odd office. You got these things over here, but it's white walls.
Yeah.
What I told people is I left those walls blank for what I'm yet to achieve.
I love it.
Because if you fill the walls up with nothing but things you did back here, your mind will never move forward to what's possible ahead of you.
Yeah.
So now if you look at my office, most of the walls are filled because it's CLA, it's Synergy Circle, it's stuff that I have achieved. It's it's stuff that I have achieved since retirement. But I tell retirees or separated veterans, leave room for the future.
Yeah, I love it.
If you don't leave room for the future in your physical, you're going to not move forward with the mental.
Yeah. Yeah, Todd, this office here, we designed this mainly around a lot of what you talked about. So this photo that's over here, that's a picture of Colin Powell and General Stewart and me having a private conversation. That meant a lot to me, and they both signed it for me. And rest their souls, they're both passed now. The sand you've got over here comes from Iwo Jima and Guadalcanal. This card is something that's special to me in the special ops community. The Constitution CZ got me. So like little things that mean a lot. Absolutely. But not going wild with it. I want to touch on this. I don't know where the hour went, but it's almost over here. Yeah. You've done another thing, and this is something I'm going to do. I've told myself I'm going to do next year. I haven't put the energy into it yet, but I'm going to be a TEDx speaker next year. You've already done that as well. Like everything I want to do, you've done 10 times. How was that? Tell me about that incredible opportunity.
So when you talk about making plans and goals, if I got to send you my goal list, I have a goal list, and it's really ambitious. And I don't know when it's going to be accomplished, because that's the joy of having a goal list. It's like, man, when it happens, it happens. So one of the things I wanted to do for years is be a TEDx, and I actually just applied for another TEDx. I really, really enjoyed that process. Like you've given thousands of speeches.
Yeah.
But TEDx is so regimented. You have those 8 minutes to speak on a center red dot.
Yeah.
And it's so many 2-3 months of preparation. I really enjoyed that because I knew it was valuable. If it was just something that they said, oh, come do it, it's not that it won't have been valuable, but the fact that they were so regimented in making you understand the process was really huge. And that turned into an NCLS opportunity this year at the Air Force Academy, where I'm going to tell you, Scott, I was definitely like, TEDx was not that nervous for me. I got up there, did it. But when I was at NCLS and they showed me the room I was going to be speaking in, and it had like 1,000 seats, and I wasn't even afraid of that. But they said, oh yeah, you're speaking, the same time as Miss America, Brian Stevens, and then an astronaut. And I'm like, well, why am I here?
I love it.
Like, who invited me?
Yeah.
But that goes again that, when I was asked to do NCLS at the Academy, being someone who was formerly stationed there and knowing how big that show is, it was probably better than the TEDx moment, because it was a community that typically don't invite a lot of enlisted people unless you're like a Medal of Honor winner or something like that.
Right.
To invite someone who they thought was inspiring enough through my through what I have out here, to invite to speak next to Miss America, an astronaut, Brian Stevens, and a host of other people who are just juggernauts. And I felt out of place until I got on that stage.
Yeah. not to share too much, but I had a recent conversation with our good friend Joe Bass, and she had done a remarkable speech in an area that traditionally former enlisted don't get an opportunity. And I was so proud and happy for her, just like you. I mean, that's awesome. And I've always found too, that nervous energy reminds me of how much I care. And that's awesome. The fact that you got to do that. And so thanks for walking me through what I can expect on the TEDx, because I'm going to shoot for that target next year as well and do some of that.
Absolutely.
I just love the idea of doing it. Hey, Todd, sadly, we're coming up on our hour. Matter of fact, we're pretty much here. Normally, I will introduce, I'll end with a book of the day for folks to think about. I've done that throughout. What I'm going to do this time, though, is flip it a little bit and tell everyone to find you on Amazon and to check out one of your books, because the things you have accomplished, you put that out there. Your newest book, Am I as good as they told me I was? Hope I got that right. Yet, as they said I was, is one, that I'm looking at, and others need to look at as well. And yeah, you may have told us the end there, but there's a story to it all. And just like you, I've got the evaluations that are a bit hyperbolic. I'm sure that, okay, yeah, I didn't do all of this myself, but I understand the system we're in. So I'll end with that. I'm going to turn it over to you for the final word. Where can we find you if we want to do business with you, if we want to hire you, or we want to collaborate with you?
Yeah, so a lot of places. So, Todd Simmons, TODDSIMMONS on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn, you can find me. You can find me, Todd Simmons, on Facebook. You can find me, T_Simmons_ on X. Our website is Courageous Lead, COURGEOUS LEAD. So courageouslead.com. You can go there. You can go to synergycircle.com, synergycircleconsulting.com, which is the consulting arm of the company. Right. So you can find us anywhere. But easiest place is LinkedIn. Friend me on LinkedIn. I'll connect with you. I answer your DMs as long as you're not trying to sell me marketing and and all these other things. But I would like to also include a book that was transformational. Cool. You can go to Amazon, find my books. The Gap in the Gain by Dan Sullivan. And if you're an entrepreneur, The Gap in the Gain would be great for personal. But if you're an entrepreneur, I will tell you who, not how. Finding your who. And who, not how. That's the greatest business transition advice I've had, is that as an entrepreneur, you want to do everything yourself. But if you go find who's, the people who are going to do those things better than you, and not be afraid to take risks to pay those people, then your business will multiply multiple X's. Yeah.
I love it. Todd, this has been remarkable. Obviously, we could have made this a couple hours long. I'm trying to keep it in that 1 hour, just, since it's live and everything. For those that are listening, you heard the energy. You've listened to the success of Todd. Reach out to him. I will tell you, whether you've got a business and you need a keynote speaker, or you want to collaborate with a veteran, whatever you're looking at, reach out to Todd, and he's going to 10X your organization right away. Todd, thank you for being a guest today on Beyond the Resume. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. I'll be sharing our next guest with you soon. And my desires is to do another one here twice a month, and I'll do another one here in August. So thank you for listening. Todd, thank you for being a guest.
Absolutely. Thank you, Scott.
Yes, sir.